Marathon has really been an interesting game upon release back in March, and I'm going to be talking about just what's been going on lately with the community as well as some of the topics of discussion in regards to it. So, Marathon has been out since March, and thus far it has gotten a lot of backlash. What I wanted to talk about is just kind of what Marathon is, and what it stands for in terms of who actually is the one that plays Marathon. Is it the hardcore gamer or is it the casual gamer? Cryo Archive as well as the ranked mode. At its core, Marathon follows that classic extraction formula where you drop in, you loot, survive, and extract. However, what makes Marathon different is that they have these timed events, Cryo Archive as well as ranked mode, which does open a window for a little bit of a content grind as well as a gameplay loop for the hardcore as well as the casual gamer. What's really kind of set itself up for an interesting dynamic, it's not overly complicated, but when it comes to playing Marathon, you really have to kind of pick it apart when it comes to what exactly is this game going to be in the future. We all know it's a live service game by Bungie, and therefore there are things about it that have been giving people kind of a skepticism, right? Just in general, the first thing being is the gameplay loop. Cryo Archive being that it's tailored to a set number of days followed by rank mode, right? One of the interesting things about this is that not many extraction shooters have these cycling timed events to where the best loot can only be gained through Cryo Archive and rank mode can only be played only certain days throughout the week, to which all that loot that you've been fighting for is going to be used to climb those leaderboards. Now, this does create some, high player activity spikes, of course, during the week. It does make the mode feel special because there are some high stakes. And this does encourage a little bit of community engagement because everybody knows that's when those time frames are available where you'll see the most players engaging. Right. Now, because of that loop, there are some negatives with it. If you miss the window for either of these game modes, you miss the content entirely. The FOMO is FOMO driven, right? You don't get to experience these gameplay loops unless you wait an entire cycle or a couple of days. So because of that content loop, you kind of are just left to wait. That's basically it. It's not ideal for people with busy schedules, your 9 to 5 worker, people that have kids. You just don't get to enjoy the content because it's locked behind a time schedule. The other thing about this system is that it rewards players who can consistently show up, but it punishes the ones who can't. You don't show up for those time events, you just miss out, and it burns people, especially if you do happen to get into these timed events and you just happen to have a bad game, get a couple of games, lose all your gear, and you're basically starting all over, and then the window closes, right? It sucks for a lot of people. It really does. Ranked mode adds that layer of gameplay loop, right? You go in, you fight with the best gear, and you hope to come out on top with extracting through those ranked mode, those tokens that you get, right? There's so many tiers until you get to the top of the leaderboard, and then it becomes a matter of, do you risk being at the top at certain points? Do you risk having to get third partied or just happen to have some bad RNG where you get caught out with some, the ranked mode is a long-term investment, and that investment can have some positives. You can play those matches, you can optimize your loadouts. It gives a more competitive edge to players and a reason to grind for that gear, right? That's kind of the whole point of having loot in the game, is to extract with it and get better loot. And some of that better loot is from those players that do play Cryo Archive. They have all the gold tier loot that you want to scrounge up and fight for, right? So it does add a layer of skill-based progression. Only the top kind of individuals are going to be playing that ranked mode, right? So that increases the likelihood of some replayability. However, on top of that, it can feel like a time commitment requirement, where if you're not playing Cryo Archive or you don't have very many friends, you're kind of missing out on a huge chunk of the game. This can push a lot of casual players out of the scene. I know that, the game not only is pretty brutal when it comes to the TTK for a lot of players, but you can also risk burnout. Just those bad games can kind of push those casual people away that just don't have the time to play the game consistently. The rank mode is basically a skill test on how much time you can invest into playing the game. That's kind of the gist of it. The other thing that does bring it to mention, like I said before, who is this game for? Is it for the casual or the hardcore players? This is where things get a little bit muddy in the waters. Marathon's design feels like a split between these two audiences where the casual player, it's easy to pick up. It's not hard to figure out Marathon. It really isn't. And it does have quick succession time. You can drop in, drop out. I mean, you can play a couple of games, whether you're just trying to hang out with the friends after work or, put the kids to bed or anything like that. But it does hamper a lot of the missed cryo archive windows. It can cause slower progression. It's harder to compete in those ranked modes because not just fighting the raid boss at the end, you ain't got to worry about that. You just got to survive enough to take the loot and extract with it in cryo archive. So if you're more casual, it kind of burns you a little bit. It does. And then on the flip side of that coin, you got hardcore players. They benefit from those scheduled events probably more so because they can play the game a lot more. If you've got 80 to 100 plus hours, you stream the game or play it consistently, you can grind those ranked modes. You can grind that cryo archive and maximize your loot progression. Now, some of the risk, of course, with that involved is obvious. The risk of burnout. You've been doing this for so long, 200 hours in a game, yeah, you're going to start to get bored of it, especially when the game only released over a month ago. That's a lot of time you've invested into something. And a lot of people, I think, don't pay attention to when they're playing these games that you guys are really going hard in the paint for it. And there's just not a lot of content there because the game doesn't have a lot of content or expects a lot of individuals to put so much of a time investment into it, right? That's kind of where I think a lot of games fall off is they just don't, they want people to play their game, but they don't really expect people to put so much time into it, right? And that's kind of where the meta shift happens, where for a lot of those hardcore players, those streamers, the pressure to keep constant content flowing for those videos, for those streams, it's a lot of pressure. And sometimes you just can't stream the game, not because you're dealing with the controversy, but also because you can only show so many maps so many times, show the same gameplay loop. That's where the individual streamer now has to be entertaining during those gameplay moments, during that whole stream, where now it's kind of put on the player and the streamer to actually showcase a little bit of their self, not just playing the game, right? So there can be a content pressure put on them as well. The other thing that I will say is a big concern is that it's a lot harder to play games that try to feed on both sides, right? The hardcore and the casual. Players are becoming more cautious of live stream games because of this, because you have one side that's more casual, laid back, has this, scheduled only a little bit of time to set aside for gaming. Then you have the hardcore players that have to really, just chew it up, spit it out, and rinse and repeat until there's nothing left, right? So you have both sides of that. Now you've added this kind of time-gated, progression-heavy scheduling to a game it's perfectly fine. It's just now the pressure is on how do you balance that? How do you make it fair? How do you make it to where the community that has enjoyed playing the game can both benefit on both sides of it, right? So that's really where you want to really have the conversation lead towards, because regardless of the numbers, regardless of that conversation that has been whipped so many times, people need to just move on from it. You really need to now start asking the question of where is Marathon heading in terms of its long lifespan that they're claiming it's going to have, right? The gameplay loop is very fine. The tension between the gunfights, between the extraction mechanics, between the player encounters, that's all good. That's perfectly fine. That's the rise and fall, the dopamine hit, all that stuff is good. But the issue that you do not want to have is that those cryo archived and ranked mode events being timed as they are will decide whether this game will thrive or not. And if they pump out more content, are they going to continue on expanding upon that time crunch? Because they've already patched it, because originally Cryo Archive and Ranked was tailored to the weekends. So they kind of fixed that kind of immediately to where you do give them props for that. But now you're kind of sitting aside this question of whether this game is going to thrive if they continuously push for these more time crunched events. And so now are we going to be more casual focused, or are we going to be more hardcore focused? We really can't have the best of both worlds at this time, because I don't see an extraction shooter being more for casuals. And that's fine. That's perfectly fine. It's just you can't make a game low barrier to entry and the ceiling be so high and time gated that no one else that can't put in a time investment that's started off casual can reach this pinnacle, because now everything is time gated. So that's where I'm curious. Do you like scheduled, content loops like this? Do you prefer to kind of play at your own pace? Do you think Marathon is more built for casuals or more hardcore gamers? I just wanted to have this open discussion because I want to move the conversation forward. I want to try and see where people's minds are at when it comes to Marathon, because again, I think it's a great game. I think it's very nice, well polished. There are some things that does need to be added to the game in terms of that polish. So let me know down in the comments what you guys think about Marathon thus far, now that it's actually had some time to be out for a while and a lot of people have been able to pick it up and play it. And I'll see y'all in the next one. Peace.